Halo sahabat Kecipir organik. Setelah kemarin kita mengetahui 3 kesalahan utama urban gardener pemula, nih masih ada kelanjutannya loh untuk 4 kesalahan umum lain yang biasa dilakukan oleh urban gardener pemula. Mau tahu ada apa aja? Yuk langsung kita cari tahu di episode ketiga.
Mistake number 4, one I admit I have made quite a bit, especially in my first few years of gardening, is not respecting the power of the mulch. We must respect the power of the mulch. This is just some bare potting mix right here, recently amended. And sure, yeah, I could plant right into this and I'm sure I would be okay, but I can reduce my watering needs, protect the soil, protect any sort of splash-upping disease type of issues with the use of some kind of mulch. Now, if you've been watching this channel a while, you know I'm obsessed with this shredded straw mulch from a company called Garden Straw. It's not available here in the US. I should have it available on my store sometime around April 2021, but don't let the fact that you can't get the exact straw that I use prevent you from using mulch. There's plenty of different things that you can use. You can of course source straw in your own area. You can use grass clippings. You can use shredded leaves, fall leaves. If you're in an area that gets a lot of leaf drop, I'm jealous, I don't. And fall leaves are a fantastic cover. Now, the couple things that you want to keep in mind with mulch, you want to make sure that you lay down a thick enough layer. I would say at least 2 inches or so, if possible. And just because I'm in a raised bed right here doesn't mean that you should only mulch a raised bed. You should mulch your in-ground plantings, and you should also mulch even smaller containers like some grow bags or just some patio style containers with something like a straw. You can do it. It is so beneficial. It's going to reduce the amount that you need to water. It's going to protect the surface of the soil, and there's just 1,000,001 different ways that you can do it. I've got a whole video on cheap sources of mulch that you should check out, but remember to mulch your garden. Mistake number 5 is not preparing the soil, not taking the time to prepare the soil before you plant. Now, if you're growing in a raised bed or a container, that just means selecting the right container mix, which I'll do a video on this spring. But let's just take this bed for example. This is the no-dig bed that I did in collaboration with Charles Dowding. And many of you who watched that video, you'll know that even during the making of that video, I was critiquing my own process as compared to Charles, who is the master of the no-dig garden bed. And so I actually ended up making some changes to this bed based on some of the mistakes I thought I made and then later knew I made in the soil preparation. So what I did here is I added a bunch of pumice to this to lighten it up. I was noticing that I was getting a little stunted growth here in the no-dig bed because I think the compost mixture was just holding way too much water. It's just way too much. And so that was a soil preparation mistake that if I didn't know that, and I had a couple years of gardening under my belt, I would have just let that be, and then these cabbage plants would have just sat here doing nothing for 3-4 months because they have no ability to actually take in nutrients and grow. So soil preparation. Now, if you're growing in ground, the first thing I recommend wholeheartedly, it's a little annoying to do, is to get a soil test. You have to do this to know what type of soil you're working with. I have a video on some DIY soil tests you can do, but nothing's gonna beat hitting up your local nursery and saying, hey, can you put me in touch with someone who can do a soil test? And they'll give you not only the composition of your soil, but the nutritive qualities of your soil, how much organic matter's in the soil, are you deficient in any particular macronutrient, as well as, if you want, it's probably a little bit of extra money, you can get a heavy metal and salt report as well, just to see if there's anything really funky going on with your soil, especially when you're planting in ground in a new space, because you just don't know what happened in the decades before you lived in this place. So soil preparation is a massive mistake that you can avoid, of course, by doing the preparation. Mistake number 6 and 7, I'm gonna give you a 2-parter here in this exact bed, is planting things that you don't like to eat. So here I have some beets and some kale. Fortunately, I have learned to like beets a lot more. I like to roast them up now, but kale I've always liked. So these are 2 things that I enjoy eating. Now, I think what a lot of beginners will do is they might Google easiest plants to grow, beginner gardening suggestions, things like that, and then they'll just grow whatever that says without any regard for if you like to eat that plant. Now, look, I love growing weird plants, unique plants, plants that maybe I don't even like to eat. So I do break this rule for the love of the grow, for the love of the garden. I want to see something interesting and maybe I'll just give it to someone else who does like it. But if you're trying to grow a garden for your family and maybe some friends and of course yourself, pick the things that you actually like to eat. It's a little silly to grow something, spend all this time and care to never harvest it, and even if you do harvest it, not use it. It's just a little bit of a waste. Now, number 7, the twofer here is, this is a pretty densely packed bed now that it's grown in, but I will confess that when things were getting a little busy here at Epic Gardening, I was not spending as much time in this particular bed as I would have wanted to. And so I have the beets that I direct sowed as well as the kale that I direct sowed, but I usually put a couple different plants in per hole, a couple different seeds, just to guarantee that something germinates. Now with beets, you don't need to do that. Beets actually have a compound seed of sorts, and one, what looks like a seed, actually has multiple seeds within it, but still you have to thin that out. So you can plant, number one, you can plant too densely seed to seed, so you can actually just plant them too close together, but number two, you cannot thin them out after they've germinated. So what happened in this particular bed, and of course now it looks really good and I'm really excited, no disease, beautiful structure on the beets and the kale, but what was happening before was I had 2-3 plants right here, 2-3 plants right here, 2-3 right there. The beets had a couple different beets all trying to grow next to each other, and you can do it, they're just going to be a lot smaller, and that's what happened. They were just a little bit small, still healthy, but small, and as soon as I thinned them out and gave them some room to breathe, they all blew up in size. So while small space gardening is where I came from, and I love cramming plants in small spaces, you still have to respect there is a certain limit upon which you can cram things in.
Nah, gimana Cipers? Sekarang udah tahu kan kesalahan-kesalahan apa aja yang harus dihindarin? Yuk subscribe dan ikuti video healthy lifestyle lainnya hanya di YouTube channel Kecipir Organik.